Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of Soul Over Matter podcast. I am your host, Michelle. And on today's episode, we have my dear friend and soul sister, Karlyn Langjahr. She is an earth magic and animal spirit medicine woman. Karlyn, welcome to Soul Over Matter. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling really excited to share this time and space with you. My heart always expands in your presence, and it's just a real treat and honor to be able to just bring what's on the heart forward to whoever would like to receive or needs these words today, whatever comes through.
Beautiful. I know. It's always a treat when we share, and I feel this episode's going to have a lot of wisdom, deep-seated earth wisdom in it. So, can you share with the podcast audience your name, earth magic, animal spirit medicine woman? Like, where does that stem from? Where does that come from?
Hmm. I think I've always been someone drawn to nature. I think many of us are as children. That's just something that we're naturally connected to because we are nature ourselves. And it was always my balm, it was always my connection to finding my place on earth, whether it was moving a lot as a child. My dad took his own life when he was 7, and he was this opener to forests and outdoor recreation and really got out into the woods in northern Wisconsin where we grew up. And I think, over the years, as we moved to more urban, outside of cities, and we're going through our own personal, traumas or just experiences that disconnect us, as we're learning also to decondition ourselves out of our own body and our inner guidance, our intuition, that animals and nature would always bring me back to myself and just give me this peace. So from a young child, I always knew I was going to somehow work with animals, or nature, protect them, help, save the earth. That was like my mission as a kid. I have a lot of funny stories with my siblings about that. They can make fun of me on many levels for that. So I went into a career path as a wildlife conservationist, mostly in the field of marine conservation. So working with, oceans and island environments, coral reefs. That was one of my specialties. And it just has been probably the one lifelong passion, my first love, I would say, is just because it allows us to just be ourselves, and we can show up to nature and around animals no matter how we are. Like, they let us drop our guards. They also have intuitive and instinctual characteristics that it's like their heart can feel our heart, and there's this resonance that's unspoken and energetic that doesn't need words. And I find so much depth and beauty and transformation in that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know you, right? So it's like when I hear you speak, when I watch your Instagram stories, when you just show up for the world, there's this resonance of pay attention. Like when I watch your stories, it's like, be here now with me. Like, let's have this intention together. So for anyone listening, how could you say if someone is living in an urban environment, right, or doesn't feel connected to nature, what would you say to them? Like, how could they drop in?
Absolutely. And I think this is going to be applicable for many, many people because populations are centralized in urban locations. And I think we make it out to be this, oh, you need to go into the wilderness and escape and totally detach. And while those aspects can be very beneficial, I think just creating a daily ritual with a plant in your home, or if you take a walk in your neighborhood, I don't care how urban we are. I spent the first few months living with my sister in Chicago, of the pandemic, having just moved from like the bush of Africa.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which is where my husband died. So I went back to the US to get, family love and support and healing resources. And, I found even in Chicago, taking a walk, smelling the plants or the trees, even if the neighborhood had been cut down, they developed the neighborhood and then planted trees along the streets. There was so much life there, just going out to breathe fresh air, clean, just get out of the house and actually take in the ions that are in the atmosphere in our outdoor world, whether it's a pet. I think pets can be a great access point for us too, because we have this unconditional love for them, right? Like we can show up to our animals without this baggage. I remember when my husband and I lived in Washington, he and my stepdaughter gifted me 2 tuxedo kittens,
Oh.
and it was just like dreamy, right? It was like a dream come true. And so I would come home and he would be like, you get more excited to come home and see than you do me. And I was like, just I have this like softness and I just see them like waiting at the window and I'm just like, oh, my little Shiba and Kronos kitty pokies. Like I just get like crazy, right? Crazy cat woman here. And he'd be like, oh, I wish you could like feel that way when you, and I'm like, well, I do, just I do the cats first and then I go to you. So it is, we don't have any baggage with them because we get to show up however we are with them. And, they just get to be there with us. Like they are the epitome of presence.
Yes. And I think too, it's just a different energy, right? Like we love people. Like I always say, it's like, I love people. I love my partner. I love my family, but animals, they don't ask anything of us, right? There are no demands. There's no expectations. Like even if you're in the most loving relationship, there's still condition there. Right. So like, it's just, I feel you. I'm the same way. The voices for animals, right? It's just a different energy. um, and that's leading me to ask you about, yes, like animals who are here with us, right? But also spirit animals, right? Totem animals. I know you talk about this a lot with your audience. Can you share more about what a spirit animal is, a totem animal? Maybe if we have a personal one or your personal one.
Absolutely. So I believe, or I feel, this is my experience and you might feel differently, but I feel like as we embark in this, our incarnation, we have 1 or maybe 2, possibly even up to 3 lifelong power animals. And I know indigenous cultures might call them totem animals. So I prefer to use power animal. They're like the lifelong animal spirit with us. They're the ones that we can tap into in all phases of our life. They've been there for us at our birth. They'll be there with us at our death, all of the transitions in between. And then what I also feel is that as we move through other phases of our life, there are significant animal spirits that come into our orb to support us during that particular phase or transition, whether it's a day long, like a really hard decision we have to make, or, an hour, or it's like multiple years. So in my personal example, my power animal is horse. And finding out it was horse was actually a little bit of because as a wildlife conservationist, I was sure it was going to be this like big cat, like a wild cat, like jaguar, leopard or cheetah or something. And then when it really landed, like, oh, it's horse, like, oh, it just, my heart just felt so open. It felt really cracked open, and it felt like yes, able to receive that. Now, as I've moved through different times in my life, I look back and I was like, wow, owl was with me
Mm,
massively during this phase. And I have had big cats. I still feel big cats right now at this stage in my life, but in Africa, big cats, not only did they literally live in my, backyard, but they were very much helping me navigate what was, preparing me for a really mega initiation and transition, which was, the spiritual awakening that took me out of a career, a desk management based career for wildlife, but really now getting to work with the subtle energies of animals and the environment, wildlife, to really help bring us back to who we are at our core, our essence.
amazing. Yeah. I love I love how you're like, oh, horse, okay. Like
I was like, really? I don't think that's right. Let me try again. She was like, oh. And, and then when I did think about it though, so I learned about it through, or I found out, or uncovered or remembered, let's say, through shamanic journeying, just accessing a trance state. And when I really did come to accept that, it was, all of these validations of like, oh, one of my very first memories as a kid was a 4-year-old with my dad's sister walking to pull a foal that had been entangled in some like dead trees, like all the branches.
mm,
And we helped pull this foal out and, free the foal. And I remember riding them. I think as a 10 or 11-year-old, I got to take horseback riding lessons and go to summer camps. And then it just became unaffordable. So I went into like team sports at school. But I had shelves and walls full of like horse figurines and horse magazine pictures. I mean, I was obsessed with horses when I look back. And I had a cousin, her dad had also died. This was my dad's brother. So they died 2 years apart. And when her mom remarried a farmer and she had horses, and this cousin and I are like the exact same age, we're like a month apart. And she had horses, and I just remember being so jealous, like, Amanda gets to have a horse. And then the
oh,
horse had a foal that was like my dream horse. It was like a black Appaloosa named Lightning. And we got to spend a week up at the farm every summer. And Amanda took me horseback riding, and they had the really large like Belgian and Clydesdale, and we would just mount them bareback, go down to the
wow.
stream and like look at tadpoles. And my other cousin got leeches stuck to her. So, I have all of these memories bubbling forth. It's like, wow, horse has always been with me.
That's amazing. It's amazing when you look back, right? When the
Mhm.
memories start to unlock and it's like our childhood, right? So much of that is repressed or we grow up and we just become so serious and we forget the innocence and the
Mhm.
nature of being so deeply connected to the world around us.
Mhm.
So, what would you say? Like you shared, you received your power animal through a shamanic journey. How can what what kind of advice would you give to others listening to find out their power animals?
Sure. And I love asking people. Um, this is a question because sometimes it relates to maybe a favorite animal or an animal we were always drawn to as a child before we had the filters on us. Sometimes I think though, if people are really gravitating or their ego is love certain elements, in my case, the big cat, maybe it is one of your power animals or animal spirits supporting you in that phase of your life. So, there are lots of ways to do shamanic journeying to meet your power animal. And I'll be leading like a 1 day kind of, I don't know, workshop or circle to do this together live with people. But I know there are other um, guides out there who love doing this kind of work. So you could probably find, people on the internet or in your local spiritual or healing communities. I think just tapping into your own intuition and just feeling out, maybe even list a few, up to 5, maybe 10 favorite animals, and just kind of feeling into their energy. What, whale might mean something for someone, and just because a lot of spiritual people say whale could be, this ancient guardian and activator for our humans to help them on their planetary ascension. Maybe someone else will feel like, oh, whale to me isn't about speaking, it's about listening, so everyone has their own take, I think. So I would just feel into it instead of, there are ways you can Google what is the spiritual significance of
Hmm.
being a fox, and there'll be lots of takes on it, and there are a lot of unifying ones. But if you feel like, oh, that, to me in the moment, I really felt like I was at a crossroads in my life and needing to purge a certain relationship, and it wasn't about X, Y, or Z. But this is a really fun question to ask kids, I find, because I think kids
Mm.
are naturally drawn to a certain animal. And when I was recently visiting my youngest sister's kiddos who are 8 and 10, I asked them, and the youngest said prairie dog. And I was like, wow,
Oh,
like, how many people say they think prairie dog is their animal spirit or their power animal? And I was like, that is so beautiful.
I love that. Did she share what it meant for her? Like why
A
it was
little
a
bit,
prairie dog?
a little bit. And then I read from Animal Speak, the Ted Andrews book. I read, the couple of pages on prairie dog for her. And I said, does this resonate? If not, like, you get to feel how you feel about them personally and have your own personal relationship, and who knows?
I love that. Yeah, because kids are they're more connected, right? They've been closer to spirit, to the spirit side, the spirit world. So yeah, it's really amazing. And I think, well, you said too, you'll be holding a circle. So whenever you find that out, I'll be sharing your information in the show notes so people can check you out. But I think
Mhm.
it's,
Mhm.
I know you do that too, where we come back to our intuition, right? It's like before you run on Google and write spiritual meaning of blank, first sit with it, right? I love that advice you're giving. Like, really put your hand on your heart and ask, like, okay, I have all these favorite animals. How do they feel in my body? How are they coming to me? Because that's another one I know you share about animals and bugs and insects all the time. So sharing the guardians that are around us at all times, right?
Mhm.
Like seeing, because I think you and I are so similar in that way too, of like, we just see and appreciate even the smallest of creatures on the planet. So
Right.
how can people listening tap into that, right? Like, oh, I don't see anything,
Yeah.
nothing comes to me, right?
Good question. And this can go back to the kind of the people who live in more urban settings too, because when we think of animals, we think of things at least as big as a squirrel or a fox, or, we, as humans, we are mammals that are kind of mega fauna in some way. So we think of other kind of megafauna mammals as animals. But to me, it just comes back down to presence, because when we're in the present moment, our observation turns on. So it can be, opening your front door and seeing a ladybug on the fence of your doorway, or on your front porch or something. And it could just be like sitting down in your backyard and seeing, are there ants coming to visit? Is there a grasshopper? The teeny tiny things. This morning, I do a daily nature walk in the forest where I live here, just south of Santa Fe. And it's been raining the last couple of days after a really dry summer. And there were all of these insects I hadn't seen before. And they felt like fairies. They were kind of swarming around and in like a little cloud. And it was like, oh, you just burst you came out of the rains. Like you've been waiting for
Mm,
the rains and pop, here you are. And then I could see the birds starting to notice them and feed upon them, as their life cycle, part of the web of life. So it was just, just this allowance of being observant and present enough. If you're taking a walk with your phone and you're looking down at your phone, you're not going to notice these things unless you bump into them. But
yeah.
look down, look up. Um, I don't advise looking up while you're walking. I have a bird watching friend who broke her ankle doing that on a bird guiding trip. So if you're going to, no, I catch myself almost tripping a lot, but yeah, ground yourself before you look up so you're not walking in terrain and tripping.
Yeah. And birds are everywhere, right? City birds, like even the pigeons have a purpose, I love that you share that. Like there is nature all around. And also sometimes it doesn't have to be the physical animal. It could be a mural with the animal on it, right? It's like really,
Absolutely.
right? Or like, yeah, the name of a coffee at the coffee shop, it has the name of that animal, right? Like a wolf is one of my spirit animals, right? So it's like they'll pop up wherever, even a child's name sometimes, like you don't know. And that's where that presence comes
Mhm.
from, right?
I,
Just
I
being
feel like
open.
wolf is right behind your head right now, like really big, like a wolf hat. Like, well, yeah, wolf is there. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Wolf, for me, it's been wolf. Ravens are huge for me. I mean, birds, you know that. I am a bird. I'm literally a bird.
Wait till you come and visit me. The ravens on this land, they're like the boss birds.
Mm,
I
yeah.
rarely see hawks or predatory birds because the ravens, their presence is so strong. There's definitely a portal here.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I was just watching a video of mine from Taos last January, and a raven's literally outside the window just cawing. And I'm like, yeah, they literally followed me throughout my journey, honestly. So yeah, I can't wait to come back to
Oh,
Santa
I feel
Fe.
that. I feel that for you. I was actually going to ask you if you knew what your power animals were. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I've had a few throughout my life, but yeah, raven specifically, but most birds like eagles, hawks, yeah,
Hmm.
those are really big, and then wolf.
Hmm.
Um,
Do you think
but
wolf is the lifelong one?
yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
They're always around. Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's like um I think maybe you can touch on this too. Sometimes people like when they're channeling or when they're almost afraid to like tap into energies that are outside of Earth, right? Like, oh, the ETs or the galactic beings or the star seeds. And, it's almost scary at times to do that. And I feel, and you can share your opinion, I feel when we tap into the energies of the earth, the animals, they're guardians, right? The animals are the guardians of the earth, or even like fairies, anything of the earth, it feels more real and a little more safe
Yes,
because
because
we know they're
it helps us
here.
ground into this lifetime experience. Whereas I think sometimes, especially if people are new to Earth, if their souls are somewhat new or they haven't had a lot of lifetimes here on Earth, and they're used to higher vibrational frequency of that divine unconditional source as baseline, like God love, source love is just harmony because that's the baseline. That I think Earth can be really disruptive and dense and feel very not at home. You can feel very like, how do I feel at home on this planet? I don't want to be here, or I just don't get it. Maybe that's not a conscious thought, but it's just like, why is it like this? Why does it have to be like this? And I think animals and nature help bring us back to that calibration of love within us. And before we had language, before we had, intercommunication or interspecies communication, it's just resonance. And another thing I would, this is a practice that I'm developing more and more for myself, and that I think is beautiful and suggest is singing when you're
Mm,
or speaking to them, because our divine template, the sacred geometry of our throat chakra, is what the outer external environment, like animals and plant forms, earth, minerals, etc., they connect even more deeply with us through our voice. And I always felt like, oh, I don't have a really good singing voice. That's why I turned to instruments, because I was like, I'm not a good singer. So it's been awakening this part of me of just like, it doesn't matter if I'm a quote unquote good singer. Like my voice is a resonance to, it's like a way I get to introduce, here I am, I'm Karlyn. I come to you as an animal guardian. I come in love. I come in reverence. I come in blessings. I come in gratitude. Like, just thank you. Let's just be
mm.
together. Let's just be together.
Ah, I want to cry. It's so beautiful. It's like, oh, yes, yes. Our voice, I can agree. My own journey as well, right? Oh, I'm not a good singer, but animals respond to our sound.
Mm,
They don't understand English, they don't understand language, they feel tone, right? So a tone of voice, it's like children, right? That tone of voice is what matters. And yeah, animals respond, and they also respond to instruments, right? If you're out, like I'll be
definitely.
out by myself with my partner, and I'll be speaking light language, he'll be playing an instrument, and like all of a sudden we're getting the hummingbirds and the dragonflies and the little lizard on the ground, like all of them just start like open, they just come through a portal like, oh, we're here with you. And it's just, I love that you share that. Like, it doesn't matter how you judge your own voice, because it also will come naturally to
Mm,
you, right? It's this natural connection. We are nature. We have forgotten that as a society. We believe as a society, not individually. A lot of us don't believe it, but as a society, as a collective, we believe we are above everything else, right?
right. I've even
And
seen food webs designed by ecologists where humans are not in the equation. It's like the
wow.
apex predator will be, whether depending on the ecosystem, like an orca or a lion, and you're like, well, there's, where are the humans in this picture? This is an ecologist, and you're forgetting that we are ecology, part of ecology.
Yeah, it's a fascinating phenomenon. I think when you awaken, right, as most of us have and are and continuing to, right, we begin to see the tree outside of our window and begin a relationship with the tree, right? I see in your stories, you're like, this tree is holding me today. I'm creating this relationship with this tree. And I think a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but some people might feel embarrassed, oh, what if someone sees me? Right?
Yes.
How did you get over that energy, or did you never have that?
No, I definitely did have it. And I'm lucky enough that the lands I walk on, I tend to be, when I'm talking or singing with them, at least I'm not usually really in close proximity to other people. I have been on trails where I'm like talking to myself or talking to the spirits, and then I'll see someone and like, oh, they just hurt, oh well, they can think what they think. Um, I did speak to this in a reel once. I created a reel because I remember when I lived in Mexico, I was doing a ceremony on the beach in a kind of on a remote beach, and I noticed a woman off in the corner, and I just did my thing. I was like, oh, I guess she could be looking and thinking like, what a weirdo, or what the hell is she doing? But I just did it there, kept my peace. And she came up to me afterwards and said, I don't know what you were doing. Can I ask you what you were doing? So I shared, and she said, I just felt so much love, and I felt so much powerful energy. And I just want to thank you because she had traveled from many hours away in a central part of Mexico, and she was going to take her life. She was going to drown herself there. She felt like, I'm being called here to sink to the bottom of the ocean. And when I felt the love and the energy that was coming from your ceremony, I knew I had to be here. And it was just like, holy shit. We have no idea what our intention, like how that can crack open the love in others and the devotion and the remembrance of being connected, of being source, God, ourselves. And from that point on, it's like what we have all of these examples of brutal, like violent sex and violence itself, murdering people, like video games to movies. These are just normal to us. Yet being in sacred devotion or performing rituals gets mocked and gets scorned. And I'm like, no, let's normalize being in devotion. Let's normalize sharing our rituals where, respectfully and quietly, if we're in places, especially if we're in sacred grounds, but let's normalize that and not normalize putting these violent, brutal images in our conscious minds.
Oh, taking a moment for that woman and her spirit, because your ripple helped save her life. Like, how did that feel to, like,
Yeah,
how did you even respond to her?
it was overwhelmingly beautiful. We shared the most beautiful hug, and I could feel so much light. She was like an explosion of light. Maybe she was feeling darkness and heaviness because, some souls just, the frequency here on earth is very intense and harsh. And I think her beautiful higher level frequency and purity, she had this pure innocence to her, really struggled because of that mismatch. And I can see, I get why she didn't feel at home here. And sometimes in our disconnected society, we just have fewer and fewer of those heart to heart moments with other humans, or other animals or nature. And so the more of those we can, and just, access, oh yeah, there are other people here who are looking for love and looking to share from this place instead of sharing, the darkness or lingering on the density or the distortion.
And what a beautiful lesson, right? To remember that our medicine, right, and our ceremony might not be just for us. And to like put our ego to the side, right, or embarrassment, or just follow that intuition to do and to be whatever your soul is calling in the moment, because it might just affect someone else's entire life trajectory.
Absolutely. And I think we've also forgotten as a society on a whole, we used to, in community, regularly perform rituals and ceremonies together in, communing with the spirits of nature. It was very much part of our different stages of life in how we would commemorate someone who transitioned to the other side, in celebrating a birth, in so many different rites of passages in our lives, that now it's just like, we're a ceremony in our lives. Marriage, maybe graduations, baby showers. Like, there are so few funerals, but there are very few community and like true ceremony where you're participating not just in gifts and here's a material item, but like actually space holding and shifting the energy so that as you walk out of that ceremony, your neurological system has shifted. So you are actually a different energy, you're a different being than who you were when you began ceremony. And I would love to bring more. My work is definitely to bring more ceremony and rites of passage, not just to individuals, but to groups and communities, because I feel like that's something that our ancestors and indigenous cultures could work through trauma collectively, could work through changes and transitions, and look at how many individuals are struggling right now with the times that we're in, these transformational times, because we don't have community to walk it through with and to understand it, not just from a cognition perspective, but like a gnosis, like the Greek knowing of knowing in our body.
Mm-hmm. Oof, we're going deep, girl. I love it. It's amazing. My first thought was the rite of passage of becoming a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
That first bleed as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And like our family, they do the best they can, but it's like, yeah, here's some tampons, here's a pad. Like, yep, it
Mm-hmm.
comes once a month now. Welcome to the club.
Right.
But there's so much wisdom, and it's a gift. It's a gift, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's also, coming in communion with women once a month or what have you, right? You're saying you're wanting to do like animal circles. It's such a forgotten tradition, and it's coming back online. I see it, but it's up
Yeah.
to us, right? The way showers, the leaders, to share these ancient rituals. And like you said, yeah, we have been so desensitized to violence, to these images on these screens that like I honestly, ever since I was little, couldn't watch, right? Because it goes right into your psyche, and that's just normal, quote unquote. But someone hugging a tree, right? Or kissing a rock or talking to the birds, they look like they're crazy and nuts.
Right. Yeah. Who are the crazy ones, really? Who wants to feed their minds with the brutality that we see on a regular
Yeah.
basis?
Oh, it's,
And
ooh,
you're so in touch with your womb, with the moon. You know, you worked with the moon for years in community too, to really help unlock people's individual connection to the moon. And you know, here's another example where the collective thought might be full moons are about releasing and celebrating, kind of culminating, and new moons are about setting intentions. And I've met someone who her moon, her feelings towards moon was the exact opposite, where she was like, no, I feel more lit up and energized by, and I feel more cocoonish in the full moon. And so it's, it comes back to, just because other people might feel that way collectively or as a majority, we all have our own individual our way of sensing, our way of knowing. And I'm sure you experience this with yourself and mentors, and then also clients, that because you channel or have psychic abilities in one way, other people might be like, oh, well, I'm not psychic because it doesn't come to me like that. And it's like, no, but you get to feel how it, everyone has this, it's our birthright. How does it show up for you? And that just gets to be experimental and playful. And this is where we get to be that like child with the curiosity of like, I wonder, if I try this, how are the trees going to respond? Or what am I going to feel? What am I going to know? What's going to come through? Maybe nothing, but that's okay. I get to at least try something and just see what happens.
I love that. Always coming back to curiosity. And yeah, we're all different. We are not all here to channel or to be in tune to the same things. That would be so boring. So that permission slip, right? The permission slip to just, yeah, get curious on how you interact with the world. And it's its inhabitants and the connection, just that deep, deep connection. And what's coming to mind is your upcoming retreat that you've
Mhm.
recently shared. Can you talk more about where that came from and yeah, details for anyone who might be
Sure.
interested?
Absolutely. So I'll be hosting my first international retreat in Namibia, Africa. So that is south and western. It's on the Atlantic Ocean, but it spans inland as well. Um, my late husband and I had traveled there in 2019, just months before he ended his life. And it was such an activating place. I just remember, as a wildlife lover, of course, obviously, but the lands themselves, um, I had a vision that I would lead like a yoga retreat there, because at the time I was more of a yoga and meditation teacher. That was like my spiritual practice. So, doing the wildlife conservation career as my day job, and then side passion of having a yoga community and teaching meditation. And so it felt like one day I'm going to come back, because the diversity of the landscapes and the wildlife just felt really powerful, felt really like ancient wisdom being held in the earth.
Mm.
Um, and I would describe them maybe differently now that I've kind of seeped in, more of like codes and frequencies of the lands, of the ancestors of the lands there. And all the elements, the directions. It's a very sparsely populated country. So I think that helps you feel things more.
Hmm.
Like there's less of an energetic barrier. And so I knew I would be going back to Namibia one day. And and I've been really called to go back to Africa. I haven't been since I left in, what was that, like around the winter holidays of 2019. So yeah, November, December. And it just felt like, as I transitioned out of being a like specialist in grief and surrender, and really stepping into this earth magic and animal spirit medicine, it was like, oh, it's now. This is the time. This is the
Mm.
place. And I'm calling it dance with the lands, because
Mm.
when I think of dance, it's just like letting yourself be in free form, I think we communicate, especially I know I do, um, or receive messages when I just drop out of my head and into my heart through my body. So that can be like yoga was always helpful for that for me. Trail running got me out of my head. Anything recreational, outdoorsy that involved movement, or five rhythms dance, just feeling this like, but dance in the sense of like play, like we're just like doing this. I take a step, universe, you take a step back, or spirits of nature, what's your next move? Like, if I do this, what do you do? And I also like to think of dance in the word guidance, like our guides
Mm.
help us dance in this realm.
Ooh, I love that.
So yeah, I should create a post about that.
Yeah.
It very much feels like, it's not just a somatic movement. We're going to be really communing and connecting with the lands in a national park with all the wildlife in the north, representing the element of earth. Then we'll head west, where we'll be working with the Atlantic Ocean. So we'll be
Mm.
on the ocean, um, maybe even sea kayaking with the fur seal colonies, if weather conditions permit. And that's the element of water west, then dropping south to the oldest sand dunes in the world, the oldest desert in the world, the Namib Desert, where you get to even climb, like 1,000-foot Big Daddy Dune, and we'll drop into a petrified camel thorn forest. So many energies there that we'll get to be in devotion, be in ritual, learn how to commune and connect. And everyone will get to experience, how do I work with the energy
Mm.
elements, the directions, the guides of the lands, the spirits of nature. It will also be, an adventure, because we'll be embarking on this safari together, but from a really deep place of intention. And then we'll end up back in the capital city where we begin. Very small, charming, not an overwhelming capital city, which will represent the east and the element of air. South will be fire, that hot desert. And we'll get to see even just the differences between the wildlife, like the zebras in the north are different than the zebras in the desert. They have their different like desert adaptations to the point where there are subspecies. And so we'll connect with different frequencies. We'll definitely do, some yoga, meditation practices. And it's going to be really intuitive, like day by day, I have an outline and it's subject to, being tweaked along the way. And our first kind of opening ceremony is going to be with horse, my power animal, as the gateway to the other animals through a horseback riding safari. We're going to get on horse and ride the horses among the wildlife at a farm just outside of the city. And if people don't feel comfortable riding a horse, they can just do go in a vehicle and do a game drive to view wildlife there.
Wow. When is this again? It just
So
sounds
this will be
absolutely spectacular.
March 3rd through the 12th. It's
Amazing.
called Earth Magic, Dance with the Lands, Earth Magic, and Animal Spirit Wisdom.
Oh, I can feel it. I can feel the power and the potency of your retreat. And all the people on it. Where can people sign up? Where can people find you? I've loved having you here, dropping in with your wisdom and your magic. It feels so grounding and nourishing.
Thank you. I'm most present on Instagram. It's at Karlyn, and I know this will be in your show notes. First name _ last name. Don't worry if you struggle with my last name, so do I. I have my whole life.
Preaching to the choir, girl.
Oh yeah, yours is even trickier. And then people can also sign up on my newsletter there. There's a link in my bio too, if you want to receive about once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week, sometimes only once a month. I send out musings and offers when there are offers to share. The guided meet your animal or your power animal, that'll be happening in October. I'm really excited because October is that kind of like eclipse season, and it's Scorpio risings, and I'm also a Scorpio sun too, so it's like, Scorpio season, here we come, like Halloween, Dia de los Muertos, bring it.
Like the shadow. We love the shadow. Oh yeah, this episode will be airing probably early October, just for that reason. I love it.
Beautiful.
Amazing. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for just being you, Michelle. You do so many wonderful things, but the most wonderful thing you are is just being you.
Oh, I fully receive that.
Yeah, I love you. I'm so grateful for you.
I love you too.